And I think the biggest sort of takeaway from our conversation, or that I think is really important for people to remember, is when you are advocating or speaking up, not to make the post about you. This isn't about your unlearning or your rehabilitation or your, blind spot being uncovered. Share facts, share people, share statistics, share stories, share resources, share links. Talk about it in a way that's not about you personally, but that is about the issue.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. Report. Let's face it, we all have to market. Large or little, it's harder than ever to stand out in a cluttered space of one-size-fits-all and copycat marketing moves. Welcome to the 4 a.m. Report, a micro podcast that brings you valuable conversations with people on the marketing dilemmas keeping them up at night. Here are your hosts, contrarian marketers and creative clutter cutters, Susan Diaz and Will Lamont.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 a.m. Report. Susan, 3 letters I often say, and I'm saying them right now to set up who we have on. WWSS. What does that stand for?
What would Sheila say?
What would Sheila say? I've mentioned this before, and she does know we say this. Sheila's a business coach and founder of The Road to Seven, who Susan has worked with before. And many times when we go down our rabbit holes, we'll take a breath and say, what would Sheila say? And it became a WWSS. I'm going to make t-shirts for us. And Sheila, you'll get one too. You can get some merch. It's some new merch ideas for you, Sheila. But we wanted to talk today because in light of the things that have happened over the past few weeks and this past year, let's face it, things are going to rock our society regarding social justice for a lot of, we're just more aware, we're more ready to speak, we're more ready to tell the truth, we're more ready to listen. So as an entrepreneur, it can be hard sometimes when to stay silent, how to know how to be a respectful supporter, not be tone deaf, but still do what you need to do, which is run your business and sell. So I know Susan and I have been giving some advice to some people over the past few weeks. I'm sure Sheila has as well. But Susan, I'll throw it over to you to further introduce the topic and then bring Sheila in.
Yeah. Well, Sheila, we've talked on multiple occasions, and I want to explain what would Sheila say and why it's important. What would Sheila say came about because you would often say that, as marketers, we had our creativity sorted, right? Like we had all the clever lines and all the interesting concepts, and sometimes it completely passed by, went over the heads of the audiences because we're not making that audience match. So simplify it and match it up to who you're speaking to. And so that's become pretty iconic. So right away, obviously, this was important because the struggle that we're seeing with people, a lot of the listeners of our podcast are smaller businesses, between 250,000 to about 5 million is probably the type of people we speak to, all focused on growth at different levels. And to them, I care deeply about a subject. I also have to do my day job is not dictated by some HR manual, right? How are you going to do that? So we were hoping to dig into that. But before we do that, Sheila, introduce yourself to our audiences a little bit in the road to 7, and also tell us what keeps you up at night right now.
I love it. Well, first off, thank you for having me. You two are 2 of my favoriteest people. My name is Shelagh Cummins. I am the CEO and founder of The Road to 7, and we are growing to become the global leader in coaching, training, and soon financing women entrepreneurs so that they can grow a freedom-based and fulfilling business. What's keeping me up at night is the opportunity. And I think, what you're talking about, this global uprising, a social uprising, is part of the great gifts that COVID has given us. And I think it's a part of the COVID reset that we're going to be seeing through tons of different areas of our life. And I think what people have realized is, especially small business owners, we have a platform and therefore we have a voice. And it's a real opportunity to stand up and dig into what it is that we believe and what we stand for. And so on that vein, I'm just going to, start with a very simple acknowledgement that the Road to Seven works and is hosted on the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And we also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit people. And the reason I want to say that, is because I believe it's poignant and important, but also as a small business, I am very clearly standing up for something that I believe in.
Very cool. Now, so over the past few weeks, as we've got the news about, over 1,000 unmarked graves of children who were in residential schools here in Canada, and we know this is just 3 schools. There were 136 schools, I think, throughout. So we know there's a lot more to happen. And when this news came out, a couple weeks ago, it really, it was like something was standing on all of our chests, I think, and we were like, oh God. My automations, I've got this planned. I want to say something. I don't want to be tone deaf. All these thoughts were going through my head, were going through other entrepreneurs' head, our clients' heads. And Susan, I think the first piece of advice we said, and this is, I think, useful to know moving forward, you don't need to know immediately what you need to do and what you should say in that moment. You can figure that out. You can rely on your network to have discussions with and that sort of thing. But I think the first bit of advice, Susan, is we always say, we equate it to that fire, you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll, right? So just stop for a minute. And it's okay to stop for a minute. Don't stop for a week, stop for a minute. Right, Susan?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, taking a pause and resetting, think about it. And part of that stop is, people love artificial intelligence, except you've heard me say this before, Sheila, a majority of the time it's not intelligent. It's just automation and it's artificial stupidity. So when we say stop, we refer to that in particular, which is like shut down the unnecessary things, right? Shut down like the automated tweets or the celebration of something in your company, or all of the, because of the timing of it, all of the graduation posts that were going on, because it was it's hard to call what should I lose the right to celebrate my child who graduated this week because of this. That's not the discussion we want to get into. We just do it in a different space. You don't have to post it out publicly for all to see at a timing that is a little out of sync. So that stop part of it is, I think, what we say do first. You don't have to know what to do next, but start with the stop.
I don't know if everything has to come to a stop. And I think that that's where we as the business owner need to really stop and breathe into, what is in alignment for me. And one of the things that as business owners, we often overlook is the core values that our entire program or entire company is built on. And when we're out of touch with the values and what we stand for, then it makes it really hard to know when we should be speaking up or when we should be adjusting what's going on. And to your point, Will, yes, there's a social uprising and I still have a company that needs to be selling. But, if you're doing push selling anyway, I think it's a real opportunity to shift your strategy.
Right. Yeah.
And I think this is where the human side of it comes in. And to your point, Susan, automaticity is a gift, being able to pre-schedule. And within that automaticity, there is an opportunity to go in and edit.
Yeah.
And so do share the photo of your graduate. Absolutely. And acknowledge that there are 1,323 children that will never graduate and their parents never even got to say goodbye to them. But I don't think that we have to stop anything. I think we need to just stop and look at it and say, is this post in alignment with who I am, what I'm about, what my company stands for, and with our values? Or is there a way that I can tweak it to make it more applicable to the day or to the times that we're experiencing? Here at the Road to Seven, one of our leading values is people first. And so you better believe we're going to stand up and speak for people when we see injustice happening around us. We are going to call out the systems that are oppressing people and that have systemic racism built within it and that are not accepting and are exclusionary, because that is one of our jobs in order to help women entrepreneurs be seen, heard, and understood, is to help pave the way so they can stand up and their voices can be heard. I feel like throughout all my social media platforms, we touch well over, tens of thousands of women and people and followers. I think it is my duty and my responsibility to share our values. And if I piss you off, you're probably not the right people for me. Here's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out.
I love that.
You know?
That's we feel the same way too. It's kind of like we pretty much, you know, we have a tone, we know what our values are, and you need to be confident in being able to, and the defend is not the right word, but you need to be confident knowing that not everybody will have those same values, and you are confident and sure enough that, well, if these values, I will like die on this spot for it because these are my values. So if they don't align with somebody else, clearly we won't be working together. You aren't my people. You're not my people. And that's what I think a lot of people, when they're struggling, especially, they want to cast that net wide, and you don't want to offend whatever. But it's like, if 30% of the people don't like your post, great. Lean into the 70% who do, right?
Yeah, even 80-20, like even 90-10. Yeah. You're not ever going to make everybody happy by speaking up, by not speaking up, by speaking up wrongly. Inevitably, you're going to upset someone. Mm-hmm. And as long as what we're saying is alignment with who we are, what we're about, what our values are, then I think we have the responsibility to stand up and say it. And it drives me crazy when people stay silent because they don't know what to say or they're afraid of offending. Well, if you're afraid of offending, you obviously haven't done your work yet, and you're going and looking to other people for inspiration. And, you know, I don't think that we as a business can label ourselves as being an ally. You know, an ally is a label that someone else gives to us when they feel that connection with what we're about. And so our job is to go and get educated. Number one, Black Lives Matter. You better believe the very first thing that we did is go and hit the books and pay for people and consultants to come in. And we create an interview series paying for everybody's expertise so that we could learn, you know, the residential schools and this unearthing. It's interesting because I talked to my daughter about it. She's 13 and she looks at me sort of incredulously and she's like, how did you not know about this? Mm-hmm. I knew about this and I'm only 13. And so guess what we do? We go and we read and we start learning. What is the land acknowledgement all about? You know, why are there so many graves? Now, Indigenous people tend to bury their people without a grave marker. That is a part of their culture. That does not excuse the 1,323 unmarked graves of children whose parents were never notified of where they are. It's not an excuse, it's just a fact. And the more armed with facts, the easier it is for us to post and say something. And I see people posting a lot and they're making it all about them and their great unlearning and their great, you know, pivot, and I'm an accepting person and I'm your ally. And you know what? It has nothing to do with you. This is a circumstance, a situation. And I think we need to, as business owners, dig into the situation, get educated and share facts. It's not about you and how you feel. It's about what is happening, and here's some information.
Yeah, that's very well
said.
I mean, I think allyship is like one of those words like thought leadership, which is like, do not call yourself that.
You
like,
can't. You can't.
That is a title that is bestowed upon you by the outside.
That's right.
So I really like that distinction that you've created. So 100%, I think, putting that work into it, and it's uncomfortable. It has to start at a personal level in all of the conversations that we've been having. That is certainly something we're discovering. It's like, if you take yourself out of the discussion because you don't know what to say, you're doing the cause an injustice, you're doing yourself an injustice, and all of the things. That said, when you get to the next level of starting to have the conversations, like whether it's the meetings or the discovery calls or the actual delivery of your services, you have endless conversations. How in those conversations can you be sort of navigating it sensitively? Because often we say marketing comes in there as well, right? Like, I mean, that's how you have your values. How am I key messaging it? How am I bringing it forward in the things that I'm saying? So how's that working for you and some of your people, Sheila? How are you translating it into?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I don't know whether I've ever made an active decision about that, but I would say, just as you were talking, I was sort of thinking about reflecting on what it is that I would do. You know, I'm in the people business, and on any sales call, you call it what you want, discovery call, sales call, laser coaching, whatever, you know, people want to call that call, where you're kind of interviewing the other person to see if they're a good fit for your program, you know, I think there's an opportunity, and people often don't do this, is to build rapport with the other person. And I want to get to know the other person, and I want to make sure that they're the right fit for me. You know, I can't help everybody. And if you come to me and you're closed minded, or, you know, even it's fine if you have a different political affiliation, but if your political affiliation harms people who I will, you know, go to the mattress protecting, we're probably not a great fit, and I'm not going to make you an offer. And so that building rapport part, which should be a part of every sales conversation anyway, by the way, and we don't take enough time in that space to really connect with that other person as a person, that I think is our biggest asset in terms of sussing out whether the other person has, whether they smell right. And that expression doesn't come from me. Lane, who is an incredible entrepreneur, they're a philanthropainer, and they do, the Auctionista is their brand name. And that is their expression. It's not mine. But I can sense when the person on the other end of the conversation is my kind of person. And so whether you smell them out, you sniff them out, whatever expression you want to use, when you bring someone in who makes your back bristle, it's you that you're harming.
Yeah.
I also think that there's an opportunity to be looking at, you know, the marketing messaging behind your programs. And one of the questions that we really encourage our students to ask continually is, why is this program needed now more than ever before? And when you can answer that question succinctly and specifically, then you all of a sudden have the messaging that you need behind it, so that it is an up-to-date marketing, if you will. And that was one of the tactics that we used when COVID, the sort of that big announcement came out, the March 13th, 2020 announcement, the world shut down. One of the things we did is, well, why is our programs needed now more than ever? Because I was seeing people suspend all their programs and cancel everything. And it was because they needed the support, they needed the guidance, they needed the accountability, they needed the sisterhood. And that became a big part of our messaging, because that is why our programs were needed now more than ever before. And when we can say, you know, our programs will help you find your voice, help you create your voice, help you create a platform for you to stand on, that is a very poignant and important reaction to the social uprising that we're seeing. So why is it that what I sell is more important now than ever before, is sort of the key questions that we use with our students.
Very interesting. I like that. That is very similar to the way we approach what we sell as well, as the whole idea of this will be this is why we feel this is of value to you right now. It's just a different way of saying it. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the mindset you're seeing in the entrepreneurs that you do work with, your students, Shelagh, because so much has gone on, and it's like one more thing in the news cycle. And again, it is the opportunity here is for us to learn more, to be better, and all of that sort of thing. But when you are selling, you do have a family, you're running your business, and these stories are coming out, and you feel like it's Groundhog Day all over again, where you've just got to pick yourself up, you've got to figure out what to do, and you've got to move on. I can imagine that, you know, everyone's feeling this level of burnout, this level of okay, when will things be a little sunnier for us all? Can you talk to me about what kind of advice or actually, you know, tactical advice you are offering up to people in your programs?
Yeah, for sure. So number one, I think we create our own sunshine. And yes, there are the issues that are coming to light are not new issues. With social media being used the way that it is right now, it's just becoming more of a mainstream topic. So I think that that's an important statement to put out. This is not new. None of these topics that have been coming to light are new in our world. These have been around and systemically ingrained within our society for hundreds of years, number one. And, you know, part of our job as a business owner is to create the space to take care of ourselves so that we can rise and handle what comes our way. And there is an element of trust that we have to have within ourselves, where I can trust, you know, one of the sentences or mantras that we really, you know, use prolifically throughout our programs is, I trust that I can handle anything that comes my way. And when you get sideswiped by an uprising, by an incident, by something that's happening, by the news cycle. It's up to us to figure out, what do we need in order to process this? And I love your stop, drop, and roll analogy. Sarah Rosensweet, who's a peaceful parenting coach, she uses the expression when you're about to blow at your kids to stop, drop, and breathe. And I think that also applies here too. It's the breathe part that we help our entrepreneurs with. We know how to stop because we freeze.
Yeah.
We know how to drop because that's just human nature. What we don't know is how to breathe into what's happening and give ourselves the space and grace to be able to process, which cannot happen when you are working 24/7. If you don't have those buffers built into your day or your week where you can step out and get quiet, turn off your phone, step away from your screen, shut your computer, go out back, go out front, get outside, go for a walk. You know, if you don't give yourselves the space and grace to do that, we cannot process and breathe, because it's in those quiet spaces and moments that our next steps become clear. Because I truly believe that we all know exactly what to do. We all are resilient. We all have grit. We all have fight. And when it's important, we always can find the strength to stand up, step in, and speak out. And so that's up to us to not only trust that we can handle anything that comes our way, and that applies to sales slumps or marketing slumps or business slumps. Like, you know, it's okay. We'll be fine. But we have to give ourselves that breathing room to be able to process and download and figure out what our next steps are.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And I think with the lifestyle, at least for us here in Ontario, it's become harder than ever to really find that separation between what it looks like to be on and off, right? I mean, you're sort of in the same spaces and confined to the same set of experiences and so forth. So, but yes, I 100% agree. And in my case, for sure, I've learned it the hard way on a few occasions where I've pushed far further than I should, and had burnout and struggled with it. So now I have a unhealthy or healthy, I don't know, a healthy fear of it. I'm like, nope, never going to that place. So whatever needs to happen just before, I know the symptoms if we're heading down that road. And you're right, the second you take, whether it's business or that idea that's been eluding your mind or whatever it is, the second you take a break, that's when it happens. Like, like go on vacation and then you're like already feeling that guilt. You're like, oh my God, I spent so much money on this. And then you'll come back and there'll be a contract. Those kind of things are there. You can choose to look at them as accidents, or you can choose to look at them as that was the energy refresh you needed before you hit this peak.
It's funny because, people often come to us for tactics and business tactics. And, there's more than one occasion where someone has come up to us and said, listen, I can't get past this revenue goal. Like I got it. It's right in front of me. I just got to push through it. My team's kind of doing well. I got everybody in place, but it's not working so well. And inevitably at some point in the conversation, I'm going to say to them, it sounds like it's time for you to take a vacation. Like, oh no, there's no way I can. I'm the most important person, blah, 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 on and on and on. You get all the pushback. And when they do, inevitably that's their biggest week of sales or their biggest month of revenue, or their team figures it out because they're on their own. And we have to sometimes let go so that we can grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of our time with you, Shelagh, but let's kind of bring it all back here to something that our listeners can maybe think about and apply or rinse through what they're doing right now. One thing that I would offer up is, if it's not feeling right, then you say something, right? Like if you're feeling like maybe you should have been doing something different, or you're just kind of coasting through and you're like, oh, I should have done this, but I don't have time, or something in my gut's telling me I should be doing something different. Listen to that intuition. I think that's the one thing I've learned. If it doesn't feel right, talk to someone. Don't ignore it, because that'll come back to bite you at some point. So that would be my just top line. Listen to your gut right now. Susan, Shelagh, are there anything else to add?
And I think the biggest sort of takeaway from our conversation, or that I think is really important for people to remember, is when you are advocating or speaking up, not to make the post about you. This isn't about your unlearning or your rehabilitation or your, blind spot being uncovered. Share facts, share people, share statistics, share stories, share resources, share links. Talk about it in a way that's not about you personally, but that is about the issue. An example is on Juneteenth. I saw so many people that were talking about celebrating Juneteenth. We chose to talk about Opal Lee, who was one of the grandmothers of advocating for Juneteenth to be a national holiday in the US. That is us taking a stand for an issue, but it has nothing to do about us.
Awesome advice. That's so good.
I really like that. And I think that's a point for marketing and communications and sales at large, where if you just don't make it about you and focus on delivering value to someone else, which is a piece of information that's in alignment with what you're trying to do, that's it. That's all you really have to do ever in marketing. From a takeaway perspective for audiences today, my tip would be, like, when you start to think about, how do I market during this time? Take it back to, who are you really marketing to? Marketing is not mass messaging at all times. It's not even being on social at all times, although we do advise that you keep a consistent presence. But that said, really finding that way to have those conversations with people, bring it up organically in your various day-to-day activities, whether they're sales calls or client calls or whatever it is. Making space for it, I think, is my big takeaway. It's okay if this is what is your biggest thing, if it's taking all of your headspace right now and you're feeling shame and vulnerability and all of the things, find ways in which you can take the conversations to smaller groups. It doesn't have to be public messaging.
Excellent. And Shelagh, for our listeners who want to find out more about you and what you do, where's the best place for them to go to find that info?
You can come to our swanky new website at theroadto7.com. You can follow us on Instagram, either at theroadto7 or Shelagh Cummins are two of our handles. And we also have a podcast called The Road to Seven with Shelagh Cummins. And we feature some incredible entrepreneurial stories. You guys were one of our first. Susan and I talked a lot about the new economy and the gig economy, and it was a wonderful interview. And those would be the best places to connect with us.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time, Shelagh.
Thank you, Shelagh.
Thank you for having me.
I'll be in touch with you about this "What would Shelagh say" merchandise idea I have.
I'm all about it. I'm all over it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thanks, Shelagh.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're losing sleep over a marketing-related problem, let us know. Drop us a line at cp.digital. Sweet dreams. Well, hopefully.